Hey guys, so before we get into the actual lab procedure and review of the gummy bear osmosis lab that I did with my brothers, I want to do a quick review of what osmosis actually is, because I know you guys did that with Mr. Tackentine, and that was a long time ago. I also want to take this time to apologize if you hear any like shouting or weird noises in the background. I'm at my parents' house and my brothers are playing outside. But with that being said, I made a cute little picture to help review what osmosis is. So if you see this picture, that represents a cell with a nucleus in it. These little tiny circles represent water molecules, and the little X's represent salt molecules. It can be molecules of other things that aren't water, but in this example, I just figured I'd stick with salt. So on this side, we have what the cells look like to start. And then on this side, over here, it is what they look like after osmosis takes place. Now remember, osmosis is the diffusion of water. Diffusion is simply the movement of molecules or particles or really anything from an area of high concentration, or where there is a lot of it, to where there's not so much of it. So in this case, we are talking about water moving from where there is a lot of water to where there isn't a whole lot of water. And the whole idea behind osmosis is that, especially when we're talking about cells, is it wants to reach equilibrium. Remember, just like when we talked about homeostasis, equilibrium just means we want to get that balance. So let's look at this first one. So we have our cell with our little water molecules in it and our little salt molecules. There's also water and salt outside of the cell. You can count them up if you want. You can pause the video now and count them up, but I already did that for you. In this cell, there are 5 water molecules on the inside and 3 salt molecules on the inside. On the outside, there's 10 water molecules and 6 salt molecules. Now, those numbers are different, but they're the same ratio. So all that I did was I multiplied 5 and 3 by 2 to get 10 and 6. So these are actually equal. They're balanced on the inside and the outside. Because of that, this is an equilibrium. So there's actually no osmosis taking place or no movement of water molecules. So at the finished state, there's still 5 and 3 on the inside and 10 and 6 on the outside. There is, again, because these are actually equal, because they are equal ratios, there is no movement of water. Again, no movement because they are balanced. And because there is no movement, the cells remain the same size. So there is no change in the cell size. So in relation to our gummy bears, what you will see is if there was an equal balance between inside of the gummy bear and outside of the gummy bear, you will see no difference or no size change between before they soak and after they soak. So if we move on to the next one here, in this next one, like I said, you can pause the video here and count up the X's and the O's if you want, but I already did that for you. So inside of the cell, there are 3 water molecules and 3 salt molecules. And on the outside, there are 12 water molecules and 6 salt molecules. Now, those ratios are not the same. It's kind of like if you were cooking. If you were cooking, we would say this is 1:1 and this is 2:1 because 3 is the same, whereas 12 is twice or double 6. So the inside is not balanced with the outside. There is a lot more water on the outside than there is on the inside. Because there's a lot more water, and remember, osmosis is water moving from where there's a lot of it to where there isn't as much. Because of that, after osmosis, water moves into the cell. So if we compare them, inside the cell, we start with 3 inside, and it increases to 5 at the end. So water is moving into the cell to balance out the outside environment with the inside environment. This causes the cell to get bigger. It's just like if we put more water into a water balloon. The balloon has to stretch to fit the rest of the water in there. So that's what happens when there's more water outside of the cell. So if there was more water outside of our gummy bear, the water would rush into our gummy bear and make it larger. And then finally, our last situation. In this one, we have 8 water molecules in the cell and 3 salt molecules in the cell. Outside, we have 7 water molecules and 6 salt molecules. So there is more water on the inside, than there is on the outside. This is not balanced. So in order to balance it out, because we have more water inside, some of that water has to move out. So that's exactly what happens. Some of the water moves out of the cell. And we can see that by comparing the numbers. So here we have 8 inside the cell, and here we have 5 water molecules inside the cell. And going back to that water balloon example, if we were to let water out of the balloon would get smaller. The same thing happens to the cell. So when there's more water in the cell than there is outside, the cell gets smaller. So the same goes for our gummy bear. If there's more water inside of our gummy bear than there is outside, if it's not balanced in that way, then water will move out of the cell, and the cell will, or out of the gummy bear, and the gummy bear will get smaller. Now you might be wondering, well, what about the salt? Well, the salt, or the other molecules in the gummy bear, are too big to move across the membrane, or out or into the cell or gummy bear or whatever we're talking about. That is because it is what we call a semi-permeable membrane. Semi means sorta, and permeable means things can pass through. So things can sort of pass through a semi-permeable membrane. That means small things like water can pass through without using energy. Other things like starch and other large molecules can't. And that's basically it for our little crash course osmosis. If you guys want to find the answers, go to the 3rd video in this playlist. If you guys want to see me run through the lab with 2 of my 3 brothers, then you can watch the 2nd video in this playlist.